sorry. The number you have reached is not service. Please check the number or try your call again. This is a recording.
Are you listening?
Hello there,
I'm Darius,
and I'm Sam.
and welcome to the Oxford Youth Podcast. This podcast is by young people, for young people, just to talk about the things that we care about.
We're here to give you a voice, whether that's the voice of your creativity, your professionalism, or just something that you're doing that you feel needs to be spoken about.
And if you want to get in touch and actually get on this podcast, you really can.
We don't bite. I mean, we promise.
And we promise. But the real question here is, are you listening?
I mean, are you listening?
Are you listening?
Are you listening?
Let's just get on into the podcast. Welcome back to the Black Lives Matter miniseries. There are some themes within this miniseries that may be upsetting to you. If it is triggering to you, themes of racism, bullying, and various other things, please we implore you to listen to another one of our podcasts that will be much more beneficial to you. Thank you, and we hope you enjoy the Black Lives Matter miniseries. Let's get into it right now. Hi everyone, it's Darius here again, and this is the final episode of the Black Lives Matter mini-series. We have just finished speaking to some amazing allies in Fantastic Allies and Where to Find Them, and I cannot fully express how grateful I am for this opportunity to be able to speak about so many important topics. I just wanted to create this ending episode just so you can have something to recap everything that you've heard so far. I know it's been a lot. There's been so much that you've been hearing over this mini-series. So here are some of our best bits and highlights. If you only ever see like a middle-class white lady drinking tea, that's all you're gonna think about. But then in the same respect, if all you ever see on TV is, like multiple black men being arrested for, multiple different things, you're going to think, all black men, do this and do that. So I understand from people's perspectives, like why they have these views, because if that's all you've ever been shown, then you get this idea in your head like, if I'm walking down the street and it's dark and there's a bunch of like black boys in hoodies, probably should be wary. Whereas that same conversation is different than if it's a bunch of white boys in hoodies.
My experiences would be getting in altercations with groups of white people. So is it the same thing as a white person coming across a white person and them not being afraid? But then when they come across the opposite, that's the only time they're afraid. Because me being black, I will come across a white group of teenagers and I'd be more shaken than being across with a black group. So what I'm trying to say is that maybe it's not racism and maybe it's a case of being comfortable.
What does BLM mean to me? BLM means real freedom for my children in their future, access to opportunities, funding in their communities, and really an equal playing field in life.
You are not alone. When you exist in spaces that weren't built for you, remember sometimes that just being you is the revolution. How do you feel about hearing something like that?
So it sits with me because I've been entering a lot of spaces that you wouldn't normally see a black person in. So hence I've been protesting in Parliament Square. I've been up to Bristol. I've been Oxford. I've been traveling a bit with the movement. So it resonates with me because I believe I'm now a symbol of what some might call an Oxford revolution. And that's important that I play that role, especially in my community, because I want to help the voiceless have a voice. And that's even speaking for those that have passed as well as those that are living and don't have the confidence to do what I'm out here doing or what you're out here doing.
So in Oxford, we had the new Westgate open a few years ago, and I was getting old enough to kind of go out on my own without my parents. And my friend and I, we went into, I believe it was a jewellery shop, or it could have been a makeup store, perhaps. It could have been Bobbi Brown, actually, which is more expensive than Superdrug makeup, obviously. It's a bit more high-end. And the minute we walked in, my friend is a dark-skinned Nigerian woman. The minute we walked in, security followed us, and it wasn't subtle. They clearly were following us, like 2 steps behind us at every moment. anything we picked up to like have a look at or test on our hand, they would just, it was almost like they were convinced we were going to steal something and that we would not be able to afford any of the products in that shop. In the end, my friend actually ended up buying multiple things. So yeah, clearly that was definitely an act of racism, in my opinion. It's just the prejudgment that they just think, well, they can't afford anything here, or they're coming to steal or cause trouble.
So thank you all for showing up today, because we're tired. And we are still fighting, but we are tired. And after you show up today, I need all of y'all to pause and ask yourselves how you show up for Black folks every day. Because when the media crews leave and when all of this ends, this is our life. In the United States and in the United Kingdom, we're dealing with racism every day, and it's systemic. So don't just show up today. Please keep showing up. Thank you.
There's a quote that you said, diversity is not about ticking boxes, it is time for radical change. What did you mean when you said that?
Well, again, you know, I don't want to sound like, oh, I've been around for so long, but this idea of diversity, equality and inclusion, we've been talking about this forever. We've had umpteen reports and reviews, and it's like, no, that is not enough, because nothing actually really changes. So what I mean by radical change, and you know, I'm part of a working party with all the cultural organisations in Oxford at the moment to really look at radical change, because it, you know, the only way you're going to get real radical change is people have to give up power. They have to share leadership. They have to open up the funds, the positions, the decision making. You have to put your words into action.
Another one of our brothers, one of our sisters have been killed by the people who were supposed to protect us. We just had nothing. Obviously, that's when the protest started and the whole Black Lives movement started, and it was so strong, and you could really feel the impact from those videos and just everything, because it wasn't even just in America, it wasn't just in England, it was across the world, and that itself should show people how important Black Lives movement is, because it wasn't just one country, it wasn't two, it was the whole world literally marching.
I would wish that it was yes, but I think no. I think people are able to desensitize themselves from what's going on with their jobs, with their family, with their work, with their hobbies. But because we were in lockdown, because many people were on their phones every day because there wasn't much else to do, they were forced to look at these pictures, and it was so good that they were forced to look at them, because it has George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, they weren't the first. They weren't the first. This wasn't new. This isn't even new in the last 5 years, last 10 years, whatever. This has been going on for centuries and centuries and centuries, and enough is enough. I remember seeing the George Floyd video, and when he's screaming, I can't breathe, and directly I had the memory of watching Eric Gardner, who was a guy who was illegally selling cigarettes on the corner of a street, and the police dropped him to the floor and stood on his neck, and he says the same words, I can't breathe. And that shows that it isn't new.
Because like obviously in like the whole movement, it's important that we all voice some, like you have to voice your opinion, but like in a way it's not my opinion that needs to be heard, but like do you know what I mean? Like yeah.
Oh, that's an amazing point, because there are so many people, I've been asked that before actually, like where is the line, like where is it my opinion and where is it like not my opinion? And I think it's brilliant you brought that up, because loads of people are questioning that. And I think it's not so much like, oh, am I now a white savior because I've saved a person of colour? It's more so like someone is, okay, I think if you take colour out of it completely, if you forget colours there, someone is in need. Someone needs help. It is this moment in time,
Yeah.
are you going to stand up and help them? And I feel like if you take that out of it, that's all that really matters at the end of the day. But then I think when the whole white savior complex comes in, it's based on your intentions behind it. Because if
So it's like, if you
Yeah.
use that to big up yourself and to seem like you're a great person, like, do it casually, don't do it for like attention or like acknowledgement.
Don't speak about it, like you do it because it matters. You do it because that person is in a vulnerable situation, and you do it because they need to be supported. You know, like people can stand up for themselves if they want to, but it's our roles as non-Black people to step up and say things that need to be said, because it's our people letting down Black people.
We always, like, a lot of people are always like, you know what, we're not racist. Americans are racist. You know, because we always study American history. We're like, don't worry, we're not as bad as Americans because we don't shoot Black people. And they're like, it's fine. That's how. And I think for me, it's worse because we normalize it. We're like, oh yeah, we don't beat and shoot Black people like on purpose. Like, we're fine. Or when people are racist in the UK, they normalize it and cover it as British humor.
Yeah. When someone says they have dark humor, but they're just
Like,
racist.
I hate it so much. Like, there's it's been a big problem since years, hundreds of years, but we never like acknowledge it. We always push it to America. We always start the American protests in the media, in school. We always demonize other people, but we never accept it ourselves and brush it under the carpet, which makes it worse and
definitely
not less racist.
Such a good example of gaslighting as well. Like,
Yeah.
I've never had a word for it before, but now I'm like, I have to use it everywhere because it happens everywhere.
When people make jokes to you and they're like, and everyone laughs and they're like, they hate on you for being offended. They're like, mate, it's British humor. Get over it. Like, you instead of becoming the victim, you're like the perpetrator. They make you feel bad. They gaslight you.
Yeah.
I feel like that's so much worse. Just because you're not physically violent to someone, like racially, even with like looking at someone, like Darius said, the lady who like looked him up and down, that's enough. Like, that counts as hate racism. You don't need to physically be violent. Like, so many people do that here, like, but we never acknowledge it. I feel like that makes it so much worse, especially with the George Floyd protest. Even everyone in England, they were like, oh, America's so bad, we're not as bad here, I'm not going to worry about it. No, it's the same, pretty much the same here, and you thinking that just like that doesn't make it any better. Loads of people I've seen on like social media comments being like, it's not that bad, I never do it, like my family's never done it, we've never physically hit a Black person, so we're not racist, I'm not going to join, we're not that bad, it shouldn't happen in the UK, the BLM, we shouldn't protest, it's a waste of time. Like, don't. That made me so much angry. Like, I don't know how you all felt.
Yeah, I think that thing you said about comparing to America, like, that's the most truth. Like, I don't understand why people feel better about being not the worst in their opinion.
Yeah.
Like, how's that a good identity? I don't want to be not the worst. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's not an achievement, and that's not good enough.
Exactly.
Like Dave said, least racist is still racist.
The fact that people ate up these the horses getting spooked at the that just says, it just speaks volumes, because that was a Black Lives Matter protest with such an important message, and now everybody's talking about police horses again. The conversation is silenced and something else is put above it. And even more so, an animal has been put above it. Again, like with what we've spoken about, it's just like dehumanizing to me.
I decided to call this ending episode Friendly Reminder, Black Lives Still Matter, simply because that's what I want you guys to remember, that after you've listened to this podcast, after you have signed petitions and donated to different causes, remember that Black Lives still matter, that people like me, people, you know, from various other countries, people that might even be your neighbors, like, their lives still matter. And it's not just a trend, it's not just a hashtag that exists on social media. This is people's lives. This, I mean, if I'm going to be honest, this is my life. this is my life, and the fact that I've been able to speak to so many people, people who have been through similar things to me in regards to racism. Hearing my friends, because pretty much every single person that I spoke to on this mini series was a friend of mine, hearing them be so impassioned about, you know, fighting racism and standing up against it and being actively anti-racist, a lot of times it made me feel extremely emotional, because it's like, wow, like you see your friends' true colors, and it's like, these are the right people that I need in my life, that are gonna stand up for me in the times when I need it, and in the times where I sometimes shouldn't and can't raise my voice or say anything or call someone out, because it could mean the end of my life. I guess things that I've learned over this mini series is that, as I previously said, I have some amazing people in my life, and I'm extremely grateful for that. I've learned that even though we're in lockdown, it's been probably one of the biggest blessings in disguise, not because of all the lives that have been lost. That's been horrendous. And I think that's the saddest thing that's come from this whole time. But I also feel like the best thing that has come from this time of lockdown is that we have genuinely started to see people as people. We see the human beings that exist on this planet as the human beings that they are. And we haven't done that previously. We haven't been able to sit down and have these kinds of conversations. Before lockdown even happened, the people who worked in the NHS weren't even considered heroes. The people who worked in your supermarkets, the people who collected your bins, the people who cleaned your offices weren't considered heroes, but now they are. And we're having all of these deep conversations that have been so necessary to have for way too long. But it's given us this time to stop, to pause, to think, to analyze the fact that we've taken so much for granted. And if I'm just basing this solely on the NHS and solely on the key workers, we have taken them for granted. And a lot of them are Black people, a lot of them are people of colour. And on top of them doing all of the amazing things that they're doing, they suffer racism every day. I've heard stories of doctors and nurses who have been told by patients, who are in serious pain, by the way, who didn't want to be seen by a Black doctor or an Indian nurse or a Pakistani, assistant. It's like, no, that is mad. Your life could be on the line, but you're more concerned with the color of the skin of the person who's trying to save your life. Just let that mill for a bit, because there are some deep issues that exist within our society, within our friendship groups, within our workplaces, that we all need to address. I need to address it in myself. I need to address it right where I am, because as I've been saying, and I'll continue to say, we all have biases. We all, make judgments and have prejudices of different people based on things that we've seen along the way, things that we've, we think like, oh, this person's like this, or this people group's like this, or they have to be like this, which is not the case. Everyone is entitled to be exactly who they are, because there is not one singular way to be Black. There's just not. And unfortunately, for many, many years, there's been this one singular stereotype that is like, this is what a Black man should be, this is what a Black woman should be. And we should never move out of that box. But me, so many other Black people around the world, my parents, my grandparents, my family, we don't accept that anymore. And that's probably one of the biggest things I've learned over this mini series, is that I'm so proud to be Black. I am so, so proud that, I have grown so much. I remember being a child and hating, and I don't use the word hate very often, but genuinely hating my skin color, wanting to change my skin color so much because of all of the bullying that I was facing, because of all of the oppression that was happening within school, that I just thought my life would be so much easier if I was white. If I could, scrub off my skin or paint it white, everyone would treat me, like everyone else. I'd be equal. but that's not it. Like, if white skin meant that Black people with albinism, you would think they'd be treated differently. They would be treated with more equality than, you know, a Black person without albinism. But that's just not the case. In fact, in some cases, they're probably treated even worse than I am. And all of these things, there are so many different thoughts, feelings, and opinions that we need to address within ourselves, as I've been saying, within our society. And I guess most importantly, within our homes, because when they're not addressed at home, they continue to be passed down for generation to generation. And that's where you have certain towns and cities around the world where they all hold a certain view that, you know, Black people are this, or Black people are thugs, or Black people are only criminals, which isn't the case. We're not. Because I'm here speaking to you or talking to you, as you can see me, and I'm clearly not a criminal. I'm not in handcuffs, and I hope to never be. I think the most important takeaway that I and everyone on this episode, on this podcast, wants you to take is that you need to love your neighbor. And it doesn't matter who that neighbor is. It doesn't matter if they're Black, if they're white, if they're straight, if they're gay, if they're trans, if they're able-bodied, if they're disabled. It does not matter. Those differences they should not correlate to how you treat someone or the respect that you give to someone. You shouldn't just look at someone and be like, oh, I'm going to respect you less because you're Black, or I'm going to respect you more because you're white. That we need to all question that. When we see it, we don't need to question it and be like, hold up, we shouldn't be doing this. We all have so much change to do. But that change starts within ourselves. It starts with, firstly, acknowledging our privilege. We all have an amount of privilege. We all do. Yes, white privilege exists. White male privilege really does exist. White male middle class privilege really does exist. But I, as a Black man, I have privilege. Firstly, being a man, being male, because that comes with, you know, so many things that if I was born a woman, that I would not get. I wouldn't be respected in a certain way simply because of that. And there are so many other things that are out of people's control that people will push them further down in society and be like, you're not worth this, you're not worth that, for something that they couldn't control and wouldn't want to anyway. I'm extremely grateful that anyone has taken the time out to listen to this mini series, because this is something that is so important to me. It's so important to my family. It's so important to my friends, because as I said at the beginning of this is our lives. There are so many people, they can stand by us and they can be allies, but at the end of the day, they're still white. And, you know, when I go out into the world, I'm only ever seen as Black. I can't, you know, stand with someone and be seen any differently. I'm just seen as Black, and I will get treated accordingly. So whether that means the police officer will look at me and think, he looks suspicious, or will pull over a member of my family and think, you look like you're about to rob a place. Not based on anything other than their internalized racism. There are so many systems within the UK, the policing system, the education system, the government, that really need to address racism in all its forms, whether that's anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, anti-Black racism. There is so much that has to be addressed, because we can't move forward as a country until those things are addressed. We need to look at the education system and hold the exam boards, hold the government minister who does education. We need to hold them accountable for what is being taught in our schools. Because, as said previously in this mini-series, that learning about Black history, learning about Asian history, learning about Hispanic history is extracurricular, is optional. A school can choose to do so, which to me makes no sense when so many of those people have influenced the culture, influenced the lives that we all have. So why shouldn't their history be represented in our schools? Why shouldn't we all be learning about the vast history that the UK has, a complete history that the UK has, not just the whitewashed version of history? As I've said previously, I just wanted to put this together, and I'm so grateful that I was given this opportunity to do so, because there aren't many platforms to just speak about what it's like to be Black, or what it's like to grow up in a way where you're seen as lesser than everyone else because of your skin tone. And I'm so grateful to Oxfordshire Youth for allowing me to have this platform to do this whole mini series. And I'm just super grateful, because this means a lot. Not only am I grateful for that, I'm grateful for the active steps that we as a charity are making to become actively anti-racist, because that in turn will help all of the youth that we are in contact with. And last but by no means least, I want to leave you with this. As I said in a previous episode, we need to move forward in love. It's all well and good shouting hate and being like, you're this, you're that. But we need to sit down and have conversations with people, find where they're coming from, and just care and love people. Because when we do that, we will all get to a place where this world will be so much brighter for us, for our children and our grandchildren. And at the end of the day, that's what I would love. I would love to live in a world where my grandchildren won't have to endure the same amount of racism that I went through. My parents had the same vision for me. My grandparents had the same vision for their children. And in certain respects, like, yeah, their children didn't go through the same racism that they went through, but it was different and it hurt a lot. So move forward in love always, even when people hurt you, even when people are shouting hate at you. Just remember that they could be going through something as well, and that could be informing why they're shouting that kind of hate at you. So always move forward in love, be kind to everyone, love thy neighbor, if you want to go there, love your neighbor as you love yourself, because if you truly start to care for people, loving people exactly how you love yourself, you would not treat people in that way. Thank you all so much for listening to this mini series. You're probably not going to hear my voice for a little bit, because I mean, you're probably sick and tired of hearing my voice. I understand, but thank you so much. As always, there'll be links in the description if you are struggling with your mental health, to provide you with some free services to help you, especially if you are struggling with all of the images of Black trauma that are consistently online. Just go and check them out, and we do not want you to be suffering on your own. Well, that's it from me here on the Oxfordshire Youth podcast. Thank you once again. I'm just so grateful to have been able to say that I have done a Black Lives Matter mini series. There have been 3 amazing parts to this mini series that, if you are just listening to this and this is all you've heard, please do go back and listen to all of the other episodes, because they were amazing. So many great conversations were had, and hopefully you will learn a lot from them. I hope to see you very, very soon. I mean, probably not next week, because you'll probably hear from Sam then, but I just appreciate you all for taking the time out. I'm Darius, and this has been the Black Lives Matter mini-series. But remember that this conversation does not end here. The conversation will always continue. Bye.